The Jack and Mark Show presents Tall Tales from the Masterpiece Library. Due to a complete lack of funding, today's episode will be part 2 and 3, combined to create only one part called the final episode of Chicken from Another Planet.
Well, the military got a hold of it too.
They did. They tried to get a hold of it, but escaped. It didn't want to stay in a military institution. Boy, a lot of heads rolled for that when it escaped that high security prison.
I think in addition to being a feminist, it was a fairly progressive chicken.
Oh, yes.
So it didn't want its talents to be used to kill other people.
That's right. It had ethics.
It did.
Oh, that was the great chicken escape. It's known in the military that general, his head roll, he also had low self-esteem, and he joined that group as well.
Yeah, so there were 5 of them. There was the general, the scientist, the thief,
the dog, and the rooster.
I mean, that group still goes on today.
Oh, I know. It just keeps growing. And this chicken, it's lived for 20 years. It doesn't have a normal lifespan. I'm telling you, this chicken is an alien. It's the chicken from another planet. It did appear at my uncle's farm. He was out there one day and he saw this, he thought it was a meteorite, and it crashed out into the forest. And he just thought it was a meteorite. But the next day, it was this chicken.
Right, and it was huge, right?
Well, it was the size of a bulldog. But its mass, it weighs much more than a normal chicken.
It once lobbied for a place on the periodic table.
It was quite remarkable that it wants a picture of itself on the periodic table. I thought it was a bit forward, but I mean, if you're a chicken from another planet, maybe wants to be remembered. Actually, is a different element. That's why it can do the things that it does.
I think it's element number 119 on the periodic table. It's in the right-hand column. That's what he's petitioning for.
Well, that's another thing. Everyone thought it was a she, but they can't even determine its sexuality. I think maybe it's a robot. They wanted to do an X-ray of it.
But she wouldn't have any of that.
They destroyed the X-ray machine.
But what happened to the feelings of the X-ray machine?
Well, it didn't have feelings, but the operator did.
And what happened to him?
Well, he had low self-esteem, of course. He had to go join the session.
Right, so then there was 4.
They had to move from the adjoining farm and the neighbor's farm and go hire a proper room.
I heard that one day the chicken heard about this session and kind of muscled in, and everybody got high self-esteem after that. Is that true?
They did, yeah. They had self-esteem while the chicken was there.
What happened to the previous moderator of the therapy group?
He was replaced by chicken, so he had low self-esteem, but he couldn't go to the session because the chicken didn't want him interfering. But then later he returned, and then they started requesting occasional visits from the chicken. You know that machine Stephen Hawkins was using? The chicken started using it, and he was able to speak with people. Get me some more chicken feed was one of the first things it said, but it was just kind of joking, because it actually, it liked the plowman's lunch. And of course, it had nothing to do with birdseed.
No, because this was no bird.
Oh, yeah, I know. It looked like a bird. But that's the thing. If it's an alien, just because we think it looks like a chicken doesn't mean it has anything to do with a chicken.
No, I mean, aliens on their chicken farms, they might have things that look like people.
Of course. And also, the worst thing of it, well, the thing that was kind of disconcerting is I think chicken was a bit of a snob. To us, to human beings. It considered itself superior.
Right. Well, with all these low self-esteems going around, I'm not surprised that it would think about that. Didn't the chicken rescue a bunch of people?
Oh, yeah. That was when that ferry was going across to Newfoundland. It's a 14-hour trip. It started taking on water, and they didn't know what to do. It was a big storm. And
someone had a big chicken sign that they shot in the sky, right? Like Batman, a big chicken symbol.
I know. This chicken has become so famous. It's remarkable. And the chicken leapt into some high-powered motorboat and drove out there and started saving people.
And what happened to the normal superheroes like Superman and all that?
They are fictional, of course. So the actors, even the actors started suffering from low self-esteem.
Like Michael Keaton.
Yeah. And of course, people don't believe that this is true. And then they come on some sort of holy mission to meet this chicken and are determined to prove it wrong. But they always leave dejected. Advocates kindness to chickens. I mean, I'll tell you, when he saw a chicken farm, he did go a bit berserk because they look like him. The thing is, too, that when he wants to hide, he just goes flying into one of these big chicken places, and you don't know which one is him.
Yeah, but he's bigger than the other chickens. That's the thing.
He just contracts his feathers, I think, and he's able to make himself look smaller.
That's how he learned how to engage in nuclear fusion.
That's how he did it?
Yeah, well, because he contracted so he got enough density, like critical density.
Oh, to produce the egg that has the critical density. Of course, the Ruskies did attempt a big kidnap, remember?
Didn't they launch a rocket?
Well, they did send a team of commandos right after the rocket had exploded on the farm.
Well, because the chicken was able to peck it out of the air, that was their problem.
Yeah, they didn't figure on that. But then the elite kidnap team, like a Navy SEALs or sort of Ruskies version, came in and they kidnapped him. And it was amazing that he got kidnapped. But of course, later on, you realize he let himself be kidnapped.
Right.
They thought, this is it, we've got him. And then they got him on the submarine, and the chicken takes over the whole submarine.
And he turned it back around.
Yeah, he turned it back around, and he drove the whole thing to Club Med down in the Bahamas somewhere.
And how are those commandos feeling these days?
They couldn't even return to Russia. They felt so humiliated. They had to start their whole own counseling session.
Oh, they didn't join the other one?
Well, they did for a while, but no one really wanted them there because
they were eating all the donuts.
They didn't have a lot of donuts in Russia, they said. And they just had to go back to Russia because Ruskies always have to go back to Russia, it seems.
That began the kind of whole détente between Canada, the United States, and Russia.
They had to have peace talks. Everyone was terrified of the chicken, but it came down to it. It was basically like, what is this chicken going to do next? No one had control of him. This chicken was doing what he wanted to do.
He eliminated social problems of the world.
And now they have a big statue of this chicken down at Club Med in the Bahamas where that Russian sub still languishes.
I heard one of the problems with that statue is a lot of pigeons are landing on it and shitting on it.
Oh, yeah. Well, suddenly one day the pigeons were just gone. Remember that? The great pigeon disappearance. And then suddenly there was a chef cooking up all these little pigeon delicacies.
Well, of course, after the chicken got control of the world, there was no more chickens for dinner.
It's kind of funny because he wasn't really a chicken, but he looked like chickens. So I guess, he kind of empathized then. His favorite hobby was leading huge rebellions of chickens in these chicken laying farms. He would sneak in there, and within 24 hours, they would have pecked all their way out of the cages. They all escaped across the countryside.
He was very helpful to waterfowl as well, wasn't he?
He had a whole platoon of chickens attack some duck hunters who were hiding in the marshes, even the retrievers. They were completely confused with chickens all over the place.
They thought, I'm not very good at my job anymore. I can't find all these ducks that my owner has shot, right? So they suffered from low self-esteem.
At this point, I think it was occupying 4 floors. And even the Ruskies used to come back occasionally.
He didn't realize that he was creating this low self-esteem.
No.
So he wanted to work on that.
He started trying to create increasing your self-esteem courses. He had all these
books.
Oh, yeah, he pecked out a book.
Well, he used Morse code, I think.
He thought that it was best to challenge his readers. And once it was deciphered, it was basically a bunch of little fables about chickens, finding themselves in the world.
Well, it was all Aesop's fables with all the characters replaced by chickens.
Funny enough, this chicken, he claimed to have written Aesop fables. He said that due to time bending and stuff, he is actually back in the ancient Greek times.
He claimed to have written all of those plays by Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah, he did make that claim. But, I gotta wonder, maybe he's just showing off. I mean, we have no way to prove his claims. And they always say, oh, yeah, a bunch of monkeys could have done it, or it was several individuals, in fact. And then he just, of course, jumps in on any sort of information that isn't solid ironclad and just said, well, actually, it was me. He said it through the Stephen Hawking's talking machine. Well, the planet he came from, of course, he was able to converse quite readily. And I think he could just communicate, sending out signals like Wi-Fi. But he got lonely. He got lonely because it's lonely at the top, and he was smarter than everybody and everything on this planet.
When he became so distraught, he started to become despondent.
And then he went out in the forest and he started rebuilding his ship. And had a nuclear fusion reactor, too.
All that egg laying he'd done, it was all to give him enough supply of energy so that he could leave planet Earth and the solar system.
Yes, and go home. I think he had a special chicken back home on the planet where he came from. In the end, it was just a big love story.
Anyways, listen, you want a bite of my chicken sandwich?
We have concluded our broadcast schedule for today. Good night.
Just